William Whalen here once again for GetMoreSports.com, and today we're talking about the Florida Gators. Now, Billy Donovan's squad entered this season as a top 10 team, certainly considered by all to be a top 25 team. Definitely some didn't think they belonged in the top 10, but nonetheless considered to be the main challenger in the SEC to the Kentucky Wildcats, with guys like Casey Hill, Chris Walker coming in and hopefully finding their own and really starting to live up to the high school hype that they had when they arrived in Gainesville. Hopes were certainly high for Billy Donovan's group. Yet here we are, sitting here in mid to late February, and all of a sudden the Florida Gators are 12-13, 5-7 in the SEC. And really at this point, it's an uphill climb to get into the NIT. The NCAA tournament, that's out the window. Barring them going on some sort of miraculous run through the SEC tournament, we can expect the Gators to miss the dance completely. Certainly a disappointment after they ran through the SEC a year ago and advanced deep in March with that group of seniors led by Patrick Young. But here we are. What I'm wondering is this. Can this team make it to the NIT? You've got road trips to LSU and Kentucky left on the schedule. That would put you, if you lose both of those games, which I think they will certainly be favored to lose, you're then looking at 15 losses on the season, and you've got to make something happen in the conference tournament just to stay over 500. You don't necessarily have to be over 500 to get the invite to the NIT, but you would think that that would certainly help your case. So what I'm thinking here is this. We may be legitimately looking at a situation where Florida does not play postseason basketball. Florida is not a program that plays in the CBI. Certainly, there's a chance they could accept it. You always want to get your guys as much playing time as possible, as much experience as possible, and that makes sense. But what I'm wondering is this. What has gone wrong? What has gone wrong in Gainesville? And I think you can point your finger to places. The first would be to guard Casey Hill, a five-star talent coming out of high school, really considered to be one of the top point guards in the country. And yet, ever since he has arrived on campus, it just hasn't seemed to click for him. For some guys, when they play college basketball, it's the pace. For some of them, it's the physicality of playing against upperclassmen point guards. For others, it's simply learning how to play within a system and not being the guy on your team. And that, I think, is part of the problem that Casey Hill has had. He was much of a scoring point guard in high school, and he's come into Florida and just hasn't been able to dominate in that same fashion. So Casey Hill certainly, and that lack of development, certainly should shoulder some of the blame. But also, we got to look at Walker. We're considered a top 5 prospect coming out of high school, winning the McDonald's All-American Slam Dunk competition. And we talked about him on the weekly podcast about how many McDonald's All-Americans haven't averaged more than 5.5 points per game in their sophomore seasons. The thing with Walker is this. When you're a big man and you are supremely athletic at the high school ranks, you can absolutely dominate things. And you can do it just with your athletic ability because you can affect the game defensively and offensively. You can probably do what you want. In college, it simply doesn't work that way. You got to have a toolbox. You got to have a skill set. You got to have moves in and around the basket. You got to be able to hedge on screens and recover. You got to be able to play help side. You got to do all the things that your high school coach probably never demanded from you because he didn't want you to transfer. You got to play basketball. And Billy Donovan wants you to play basketball. Billy Donovan needs you to play basketball. Florida is one of the best programs in the country. Billy Donovan, one of the most extensively experienced and accoladed coaches in the country. Billy Donovan knows what he's doing. And if you can't get on the floor for Billy Donovan, I think that says something about where you're at developmentally. Could Walker mature, grow up, and go on to have a professional career somewhere? Absolutely. This is not the end of the road for him or Hill. But nonetheless, for this Florida team this year, a team that had such high expectations because largely of those two individuals, it's been such a disappointment to watch them flounder through much of this season in mediocrity. And now they're looking at a chance to go below mediocrity and just be a bad basketball team. Florida fans deserve more than that. Certainly the program's prestige deserves more than that. I'm sure these young men worked very hard to give it more than they currently have been able to. But nonetheless, results are what they are. Nothing speaks louder than your record. As Tad Boyle at Colorado always told me when I worked on that beat, you are what your record says you are. And right now, Florida's not good. And this year is going to be one to forget.